The sun today rises over the state of Minnesota and over the original tribal homelands of the Ojibwa and Dakota people. Each day, Minnesota's 11 Indian tribes celebrate their strength as sovereign nations. The powerful treaties that preserve these tribal lands and secure the space for Native people to live in an ever-changing world are living documents that recognize the inherent and inalienable rights for the Native nations in Minnesota.
If you look at the history of treaties between the United States government and the tribal nations, they were never fair.
It's like we're playing Monopoly and they threw the box top away and the rules, and they make the rules as we go along.
It's time that we exercise our treaty rights. We reserve those rights.
Treaties matter because they set the foundation for where we arrived at today. Here at Red Lake, we had a relationship with the fish and the animals, and over time, it became a staple here in the community.
We as Indigenous people, we do a ceremony each and every year. It's kind of like asking permission and giving thanks at the same time.
With the lake itself, exclusively the access is limited to the band members.
And that kind of makes non-members, I guess, maybe jealous and kind of wondering why do we get these special privileges, but they got to remember it's a signed document with the American government, which is the same as the Constitution of America, so it needs to be upheld.
Because this is our land, our lake, and our water, and the walleyes belongs to Red Lake Band of Ojibwe. We have well over 200 tribal members that go out onto our lake. Each day they bring in thousands of pounds.
I think what makes us unique is we're a large land-based tribe, and we've held all of that in common throughout our history. We are the closest thing that we can think of as a nation within the exterior boundaries of the United States.
The Bidwaks and Dakota have been here for hundreds of years. And this is one of the original villages, Chief Shakpe's village. The resurgence of this community in the tribe really started when we got our federal recognition in 1969. So all this growth has happened in the last 40 years or so. Sovereignty is inherent to every tribe. It wasn't provided by any treaty or agreement, but it allows the tribes to do upon their lands as they choose, and gambling was one of those things. That has proven to be the economic engine for tribal governments. Now we have a community here, we have enterprises, we maintain our own streets and sewer, water system, and we've got little green energy projects. We looked and said, we need to take better care of all this land we just bought. And I always shake my head because we were once in possession of 54 million acres. And now we've got 3,000 acres. And we have to buy it back. I know here in Minnesota you read some of the history, and the tribal leaders knew that this wasn't a good thing to sign off. But the option was war and annihilation, or total removal. Well, Minnesota, we got both. They attempted to annihilate us, and then they did remove us. And it took us about 80 years to get back over here.
tobacco is for the four directions, the four grandfathers. Gitchimanidu, the Great Spirit, and for Mother Earth. And then I offer tobacco for the lake and for the spirit of walleye and the fish and the underwater beings that we have to be respectful of. The treaties guaranteed our rights to gather these resources and guaranteed that we can have these resources so that we can continue to survive in today's society. Well, all of this fish I'm going to take home. When I offered that tobacco at the beginning and to the lake and to the lake spirits, that's what I told them. I was going to, this is for me and my family, and I'm thanking them for this gift they gave me today, and I'll use it in a good way.
Wiggly like you.
I have a responsibility to my ancestors and to my uncles who taught me this, to do the right thing and to do this in a good way. Just like our ancestors who walked this earth for thousands of years before us, So for me, there's no disconnect. There's no disconnect to this, to the land, to the lake, and to the people who walked this area before me.
The Boys Fort Band kind of planted our roots in the area in the past 200-300 years, and it's what we call home. Just one of the most beautiful spots on the earth, I think.
The museum is not just a museum. I see it as an educational facility. I believe that if you can bridge that gap of misunderstanding and not knowing, that you can make people come together and honor and respect each other. The 1854 treaty is a living document, so it's not something that's part of history, it's something that's part of today, that's very, very important, not only to us as Native people, but it's important for other people to learn about them. When our ancestors, when they scratched that X in that paper, before they did that, they made sure that for generations to come, the people would be able to use this land. I'm hoping as a Native person that my children and my children's children will be able to utilize these same rights that I am utilizing today.
The ceded territory that the three tribes, Chippewa tribes of Fond du Lac, Bois Forte, and Grand Portage, sold or ceded to the federal government, about 5.2 million acres. They did not relinquish hunting, fishing, and gathering rights. We are actually peace officers for the state of Minnesota. Our jurisdiction is the 54 ceded territory, and we can enforce fish and game and recreation laws for any person in the state, tribal, non-tribal alike.
The DNR, along with the 1854 Treaty Authority, work hand in hand. So we need to protect the true meaning of the treaty. And by doing that, we need to teach future generations about the right to hunt, fish, and gather, and the meaning of the treaty.
Minnesota has a real thorny history, and I imagine that the ones that are writing that history really don't want to be looked upon in an unfavorable light.
And so the first treaties probably were just equal sovereigns, no military issues or whatever going on. The successive treaties became more the person with the most military might to force something in to be signed
We were told by the United States of America that we were no longer be allowed in Minnesota due to the conflict of 1862.
All you have to do if you ever come into this area is take a look around you and watch the airplanes take off and see the traffic on the freeways. Underneath it all, there's the old village sites. And in those village sites, for us, there's a lot of memories of who our ancestors were and what they did.
And when you believe, like Dakota people do, that the earth is your relative, you want to be with your relatives, and our relatives are here in this river valley. So I imagine we had left for a time, but that desire to return home is ingrained in every human being.
White Earth is what's called a treaty reservation. We arrived in White Earth in 1868, and our annual powwow is a celebration of the arrival of the people from Gull Lake to White Earth.
And it became a tradition that every year there was a celebration.
The treaty is everything. Everything is based on our treaty. There's nothing that's not based on our treaty nowadays.
Just the ability of our tribal nation to exercise their sovereign rights, at least with our tribal law enforcement, is a prime example of what needs to happen as a nation to exercise their rights.
Those rights are sovereign, inherent, original rights from the Creator, not the federal government.
For us to overcome even today is a resiliency that's based in spirituality.
Our treaties should be talked about in public schools, should be taught. I think a lot of our culture is missing.
Without culture and tradition, you are nothing.
Treaties were necessary, and some consider them a necessary evil.
We take our right to be here very seriously, and I think the treaty spelled that out.
And as this day comes to a close, we acknowledge the completion of a cycle, the movement of the sun beyond the horizon. For some, the day is marked by celebration. For others, the day ends quietly. But for all Native nations in Minnesota, each day we remember our ancestors who fought for our treaty rights that benefit tribal members today and will benefit the generations to come.
The greatest potential we have is the gray matter between our ears. To be proud of who we are, our young people, to get an education, to thrive in this society and participate in this society, and to force this society, this government, to live up to its obligations.